This is the new Mazda CX-5. Well look, it's not that new. This is more of a nip and tuck for Mazda's global bestseller, which has been in Australia for a few years now. But there are some new design elements, a new trim level with this funky new colour, and a quieter, more refined drive experience. But is that enough for it to keep up with models like the Toyota RAV4 and Subaru Forester? Let's find out. And yes, we're going to be covering everything here, but if time is precious and you're in a rush, feel free to jump ahead by using the time codings or the chapter markings. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe, throw us a like or a comment and join the conversation. Right, got it? Then let's get moving.
There has been some juggling of the CX-5 range, which has resulted in 5 trim levels, 4 engine options, 2 fuel types and 2 transmissions offered across the CX-5 family, with prices spanning around $32,000 for the entry-level Max with a manual transmission to around $54,000 for the top-spec Akira. Prices are up somewhere between $800 and $1,300 across most of the range. The Max cars deliver things like 17-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, black cloth seats, an 8-inch central screen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, though without a touchscreen, controlling it all through the little center console dial is irritating, a 6-speaker stereo and leather on the steering wheel and shifter. Max Sport models then get LED fog lamps, dual zone climate, sat-nav and hidden USB charge points in the pull-down seat divider in the back. Next up is the Touring, which will give you keyless entry, a wireless charger for your mobile, front parking sensors, and a neat boot floor which can be reversed when you're carrying muddy gear for easier cleaning. New for this update is the Touring Active, which seeks to up the style a little bit, with 17-inch alloys finished in a grey metallic, gloss black side mirrors, and Maztec seats with fluoro green accents in the cabin and on the bodywork. Still with me? Don't worry, we're almost there. Next comes the sporty looking GT SP, which adds a bigger 10.25-inch central display, 19-inch alloys, a cool looking gloss black treatment to the mirrors and grille, a black interior trim, a sunroof and powered boot, heated front seats and a 10-speaker Bose stereo. Finally, there's the top tier Akira, with its 19-inch alloys, Napa leather seats, adaptive LED headlights and a second 7-inch screen. Now that's a lot to take in, so for the full details, just head to carsguide.com.au where you'll find all the details.
Look, there's no denying the CX-5 remains a fairly handsome vehicle, which is probably why Mazda hasn't messed with the formula all that much, although there are some small changes. This grille, for example, has a new dimension here to make it feel a little bit more 3D. The headlights now more closely match the incoming CX-60, and there's more body colored or gloss back elements depending on your trim level, and the rear lights have changed too. But really we're talking minor changes, not a complete overhaul. And that's true in the cabin too, so hop in and we'll take a look. Now the story inside is a bit like the story outside, in so much that if you like the current CX-5, you're gonna like this one too. But if you don't like it, well, I've got some bad news for you. Among the biggest changes in here, though, is a bit of a tushy subject. It's these new seats. Now, they've been designed to keep your hips and your spine stable when you're driving, so you reach your destination feeling more refreshed. And I don't know about that, but I can tell you they're pretty comfy. Elsewhere, though, it is a clean and premium feeling space, much like it always was.
The Mazda CX-5 range stretches 4,575mm in length, 1,845mm in width, and around 1,680mm in height. It rides on a 2,700mm wheelbase, and it has been pretty cleverly packaged to deliver enough cabin and boot space to satisfy most people. Speaking of which, the boot opens to reveal a usable, though not massive, 438 litres with the rear seats in place, and that number swells to 1,340 litres with the back pews folded flat, with both those numbers measured in VDA. More clever stuff?
Now, obviously the CX-5's exterior dimensions haven't changed, and that means neither has interior space, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm sitting behind my own driving position, and as you can see, I've got plenty of knee room and plenty of headroom, and I'm 175 centimeters tall for the record. Now that means you will get 2 adults across the back seat here in comfort, but 3 will be a stretch, mostly because this console protrudes a fair bit, there's a raised tunnel, and so it just means that putting 3 full-size humans in here might be a bit of a push. A better option then is to deploy the armrest, which not only gives you 2 cup holders, but I particularly like the 2 hidden USB ports as well. Now, because this is the Touring Active, there's a couple of extra design tweaks here as well, namely this bright fluorescent green running through the seat stitching, which matches the louvers for the air vents up front as well.
There are 4 engines on offer here, and we'll pop the details up on screen so you don't need to write anything down. But what you really need to know is that the pick of the bunch is the punchy 2.5 litre turbo petrol, which is such a good fit for this vehicle. Elsewhere, you've got a choice of petrol or diesel, manual or automatic, and 2 or all-wheel drive. Choices, choices, choices. There are plenty of them on offer here. Non-turbo vehicles get a 56 litre tank, while turbo cars nab an extra 2 litres for 58 in total. Now, there's no electrification on offer in the CX-5 family, and with petrol prices increasingly horrific these days, that's something that might weigh on your mind a little bit. The good news is that petrol-powered examples of the CX-5 run on the cheapest 91 RON fuel, so that's something.
Now, the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed that we've swapped cars here. There's no more fluorescent stitching or fluorescent vents, and that's because despite the fact there's about 11 billion engine and gearbox combinations in the CX-5, including petrol and diesel, this one is my favorite. This is the 2.5 turbo with all-wheel drive, and it just suits this car perfectly. Now, it's not a performance car, it's not super fast, but it's just so confidence inspiring to know that you've got plenty of grunt underfoot should you ever need to overtake or anything else. So we're on a freeway here. We're sitting at about 2,000 RPM and 100 kilometers an hour. And if you wanted to pull out to overtake, the power's there almost immediately for you, and the maneuver's done before you know it. That's why I like having a little bit more power in a car. It's not that you want it to be a performance vehicle, but it just feels nice to have the grunt when you need it. Now, speaking of those performance aspirations, we did happen to hit some twisty roads yesterday in this, and I gotta say, I was pretty surprised at how accomplished it felt. It felt low to the ground, it didn't roll around or tip about, it had plenty of grip, and it just sort of smoothly powered through bends. Now, it is better on the more sweepy stuff than the super twisty stuff, of course, but Alpine roads are not out of the question in this, especially with this powertrain. Now, apart from all of that though, there's really not that much to report. It's a very similar drive experience to the CX-5 that's come before it. Yes, there's been work done in NVH or noise, vibration, harshness to make the drive experience a little bit smoother and a little bit quieter, but I think you'd have to be a bit of an anorak to really spot it. It's just a smooth, accomplished drive experience. The fact that it hasn't changed all that much isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, there's also been some changes to the drive modes in this car, not to the normal mode or sport, which still makes it feel a little bit angrier, a little bit more taut and ready to go, but there have been some adjustments made to the off-road mode. Now, this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, which means you're not going to be crossing the Simpson Desert in it, but Mazda says there have been some changes to give you more traction and stability on off-road surfaces, should you ever venture off the beaten path. But let's be totally honest, most owners of this are unlikely to tackle anything much harder than the gravel driveway on the way to their favourite winery, and to be honest, you could probably do that in any of the modes. What it does do though, and especially with this 2.5 turbo powertrain, is give you a vehicle that doesn't always feel like an SUV. Sure, there's room for the kids in the gear, but when they're out of the car and you want to go for a drive, you can really eke some fun out of it as well. This engine is really willing. It even sounds pretty good when you put your foot down, and on the right twisting road, it acquits itself pretty well too. So this isn't just a family-friendly SUV, it is honestly a vehicle that you'll be able to get some driver enjoyment out of as well. Now, on that driver enjoyment, the steering is still really nice. It feels linear, it feels confidence-inspiring and predictable, and the suspension, while it can clatter a little bit over rough road imperfections, is tuned to give you a sense of connection to the road below you, which I always like as well, and makes for a more enjoyable drive. So in summary, yes, it's feeling a little old school in places, and certainly the cabin tech could use a bit of an overhaul, but it's still a really solid offering and a really nice car to drive. The only downside, I guess, is without any form of electrification or proper hybrid powertrain, your fuel use is going to be a little higher. So we've been averaging about 11.6 litres per 100 over the last 200 Ks or so. And yes, we've been driving them a little bit harder than most people would drive them day to day, but with fuel currently more than $2 a litre, that's something to think about too.
The CX-5 range is packing the usual swag bag of safety kit, and for the full details, just head on over to my full review on carsguide.com.au. It does arrive wearing a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, but it's probably worth pointing out that that was issued back when this model first arrived in 2017. The Mazda CX-5 is covered by a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is about middle of the road by today's standards. You also get cap price servicing, and a trip to the dealership will be required every 10,000 kilometres. You can expect to pay around $350 for each of the first 5 services.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it, and that's clearly the play Mazda's made here with the CX-5. It might not be the newest kid on the block anymore, but it's still a super solid offering in the mid-size SUV segment. Even if the cabin tech is beginning to feel a little outdated, and it could probably use some hybrid electrification. For that though, you'll have to wait for the all-new CX-60, which will arrive in Australia by the end of the year. Now remember, do hit subscribe so you stay on top of all of our latest videos, and to get your new car news and reviews fix, head to carsguide.com.au.